I'm alive. How about you?
I'm alive too. Great to see you.
You too.
So I'm going to admit people now, actually, and we'll get cracking.
Okay.
Yeah, how's life?
Yeah. Yeah, this is... I'm not enjoying this right now.
You're not enjoying this buzz right now?
No.
Okay. So...
Tell her, I don't actually know her. Tell her not to say it to you.
Have we admitted everybody?
No.
Yeah? We have?
No, just her.
Oh, okay. We're admitting people now. And Teal, we're just gonna, we'll roll with it. I'm gonna do a short meditation at the beginning.
Okay.
To get cracking, so people are coming in there now. And we're live on Facebook as well. Okay. So Teal Swan, you're very welcome. We haven't seen you since 24... When was the last time in Oregon? 2016, actually.
Oh. Yep.
I think you had a great trip here, though, did you? You really
Oh,
enjoyed
no,
it?
I loved it. It was my favorite, so, yeah.
Yeah? That's great.
Hence the face palm. It's been that long? No.
Yeah, it's been that long. Yeah. And I don't know how long it's going to be now since we get you back, but
Yeah.
as soon as we get you back, we'll be delighted. So everybody's welcome there coming in. I'm just going to do a short meditation to get us all centered. And just a couple of minutes, I'll invite you all to just put your hand on your hearts, drop out of that head energy, and go right into your heart center. And take a couple of breaths in there. And on the out breath, just really let go of your day and feel yourself kind of just falling into your body. And as you kind of sit in this space, this heart space, what we're doing is here, we're just moving from our kind of thought forms into a language of feeling. So we're moving into the language of feeling. So let go of thinking, let go of judgment, let go of the need to have an opinion, to have a belief, and just sit in this space, this open space of feeling. Whatever resonates, take in. Whatever doesn't, just let go of it. And now as you open your eyes, keep that energy with you. And you work from your heart for the rest of the evening if you can. And there she is, Teal Swan. Brilliant. So delighted to see you again. I want to start right at the top of this. I know this is a funny time, and you said it there, things are a little bit tricky. What's the thing that's exciting you the most right now? What's giving you the best buzz right now in your life?
Creativity. I have tons and tons of time now to create things. And to, like food and like new products, so I'm trying to entertain myself that way. Yeah.
Okay, and it's working out. You've got a book, I believe, called The Hunger of the Pine. Tell me a bit about that. What's that about?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. Well, I decided last year that I was gonna do a novel for the first time. It's book number 6. It was an opportunity to do two things. The first thing is I wanted to really showcase my writing ability. When you're writing like a self-help book, you're basically using words to explain things. It's not the same as descriptive writing. But when we talk about somebody being like an excellent writer, it's really about their ability to use words to convey a sensation or an emotion. So I wanted to put myself on the map as a writer, not just someone who writes books. And on top of that, being in the position that I'm in, I'm acutely aware of the fact that it's very difficult for people to understand things fully when you're just talking to them about them. It does a lot better when people are in first-person perspective. So I wanted to use the characters in my book to put people in the perspective of American homelessness.
And it just came, when did it come out? It just came out a couple of weeks ago?
No, actually, it's not out until October 13th. We're in pre-sale right now.
Okay. So we're doing a bit of a build-up, yeah?
I need to, because pre-sales I'm basically taking all of the pre-sales and donating all of my personal profits from the pre-sales to youth homelessness. So I'm trying to drum up as much as I possibly can around the pre-sale.
So it's kind of a cause that's very close to your heart.
Hugely, yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. And where are you now? What's going on? Where are you kind of experiencing all this buzz at the moment? And how strict are things around you right now?
I'm in the United States. It's pretty strict. But of course, as usual for the United States, pretty divisive. The state where I am at just instituted a statewide mask mandate in all public areas. There's a few travel restrictions and things like that, but they've made it so miserable to be out, to be completely honest with you, that it's like there's no point in doing it. Because it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Everybody's got this energy towards each other here that's really, 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 really divisive. And on top of that, we've got the whole racism and equality issue and a pending election happening in the United States, which is so polarized, it's hard to believe it.
Yeah, it's a real cauldron right there right now, isn't it? We can see that from here, it's like it's really bubbling up. What's your view on all of that? What do you think? How do you think the election is going to roll? What do you think is going to happen? You get a sense of it?
I will be so surprised if anyone other than the current president maintains his power.
And, okay, so that brings me to an interesting point. I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about QAnon. You probably know a bit about that and about Trump. So some kind of holistic spiritual people are coming across now and saying Trump's a bit of a savior. That he's doing things like, say, quite controversial things that like somebody like Clinton or Obama just would not do. So he's got this kind of disruptive energy. And so these are very rational people who are big, especially here in the Irish community, the spiritual people, and they're going around saying this guy could be a kind of a bit of a savior element here. I mean, I just don't really see it that way, but I do get surprised by him sometimes. So what's your take on that? And I'm sure you've come across it where people are starting to see him in a very different light. How do you view him?
I think it's incredibly dangerous to see him in that way.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who... I hate when we label things like conspiracy theory, you know what I mean? Because things like controlled opposition and what have you, it's not conspiracy theory. It's the norm for any group in power. So, a lot of these things that people are coming up with about, underground sex rings and things like that, that's a reality. I have lived through those realities myself. But I think the problem is that, especially in a place as politicized as the United States of America, you can capture an entire demographic of people just by sort of spinning in with their narrative, and I think that's what they've done with this particular figure. So, I don't think this is a safe man.
Yeah, okay. And it's an amazing thing that's happening, that people are they're going on with that vibe, that they're seeing him that way. It's a complete turnaround, and it just doesn't ring true for me, even though I do see some kind of good elements, not necessarily to him, but just to what's happening. We can see right now that the dark and the light are kind of dancing together. They're really playing out what's happening in the world. This weird way, the way it really suits the light sometimes, even though it seems really dark. Like, as you said, you're home, you get creative. So many people are getting great things about this experience. And they're starting to check in with themselves. They're starting to really heal themselves and move forward, But then the restrictions clash against your kind of free nature. So it's this kind of dance going. So do you see it that way? Do you see it kind of suiting both sides right now?
I think that the ability to see it suiting both sides kind of depends upon what economic situation you find yourself in. And, I'm acutely aware of the fact that if we are even able to sit here and be having this conversation, that's a luxury. The people who, as usual, are going to suffer the most in this are the people that don't have the money to have this luxury. And I don't think this is going to be positive for them. And like right now, I mean, this is what's hurting me the most about the situation is that we're not even in it. I mean, when we talk about what's about to happen here in the world with the human consciousness meeting with its shadow, you're not in it yet.
Okay.
We're building up to that conflict. So it's about to get a lot worse. And I know people don't like it when I say that because they're like, well, you're focusing on it, so you're creating it. But the way that humanity is going right now was already decided. It was decided in 2015. 2012 was actually the crossroads for us to choose whether or not, as a collective, we were going to wake up or whether we needed to whack a tree at 70 miles an hour moment. Now, what I mean by that is that I know you know people in your life who, they're sort of going about their business doing the same exact thing in the same ways, and then they manifest cancer or they get in a horrible breakup, and that's what it takes for them to wake up to the fact that they have not been living in alignment with their best interests or the best interests of those around them. So it sort of requires that huge jolting shock of an experience in order to awaken. And humanity in 2012 was put at that crossroads and made the decision that they needed the whack a tree at 70 miles an hour moment. So there was many of us who were down here teaching at that time that by 2015 had a little bit of a crisis, realizing what that would mean for us, helping people through that type of an experience on a global level. And what's interesting is when you look at the timelines for Earth itself, the beginning of this conflict is actually with September 11th, years and years and years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
So, we're in something much bigger than most people have any awareness of. Most people feel like we've just pushed the pause button on life. It's much more serious.
Yeah, and you feel it's about to really kick off. We haven't even got there yet.
No.
Okay. So this is, I remember the first time I chatted to you at the Alive event in Dublin in Ireland. I introduced the event as Positive Nights because my magazine is Positive Life, and you kind of took the piss a bit and in a very good way. And so you said, "What's all the thing with positivity, Paul? What's the big deal?" And you got me, and you said, I always remember you saying to me, and I actually quoted this to so many people because I thought it was a really pivotal moment for me. It was a really reminder for me, and I thought it was a brilliant way that you said it. You said, what's the big deal about the shadow? Like, that's where the gold is. So get into your shadow, feel comfortable with your shadow, and then there ain't no shadow. So can you apply that philosophy right now to what we're going through?
Yes, exactly. This is what I'm hoping people will do. So anything that you're looking out at the world and being frustrated about right now is a huge opportunity to see that inside yourself. So for example, partisanship. Right now you've never seen the world becoming more divided than it is today. It's like separation, power 10, right? And actually social media is feeding into this in a huge way, because let's say that I'm already partisan towards the idea that, everybody who is wearing a mask is a retard. Let's say that that's what I think. If I start to, on social media, look at those types of things, all it takes is the technology itself to kick back more results like it. So what's starting to happen is that people are not being exposed to contradictory thought. And not more than that, this is even more concerning than that. I'll, of course, spin this back into what people can do with this, right? More concerning than that is that so many of us, because we're starting to gain awareness of this fact, and about how much fake stuff is out there, false information is out there, we're starting to develop like a real lack of trust around information in general. I can't hear you all of a sudden. Are we good?
No, you're fine. Sorry, go ahead. I was moving my light.
We're starting to develop a lack of trust around the information that we're receiving anyway. And the problem with that is that we start to default away from logic and towards our own emotional reasoning. That means that our triggers are actually in control of what information we will accept or not accept. So people are becoming more and more and more and more shut down and partisan in their belief structures. So let's say that we're looking out in the world and recognizing this. We're not going to recognize it in ourselves, we're going to recognize it in other people. It's going to be, well, God, it's like they just won't even listen to anything. They've just made up their mind. So that's an opportunity for us to be like, all right, where have I made my mind up? Are there any issues where it's literally like I'm so locked down I'm not willing to even listen to somebody on the other side? And when we can work and create some pliability around that part, we become that change factor within the world. The one that's like, okay, let's actually listen. Let's seek to understand instead of to convert, you know? That's just one example. I mean, we're swimming in shadows. It's all an opportunity to see these things within ourselves. What part of me wants to control everything? What part of me is just absolutely so terrified that I run the risk of making the very wrong decision? It's like you can take literally anything that you're seeing out in this situation and apply it to how you are that problem. You know?
I mean, you know, now more than ever, is it a time to really, you know, the way every spiritual teacher says it's an inside game. I mean, one of your favorite, I'm presuming, but we had a little chat about Eckhart when you were here before, and I'm a big fan of his, and you like him. I mean, he just says it's totally on the inside, you know. And I mean, could we moving into this, we are shifting our consciousness. You can feel it in us. You can feel it in humanity. This kind of this ability to navigate the eye of the storm is becoming stronger in us, you know. So if it's really an inside job, I mean, can I just completely let go of all this chaos that's going on around me right now? Can I just let go of it all?
No.
Okay.
Because it's you. See, that is to say that what's happening in the external, we're in a 360-degree mirror hologram. This is the mirror dimension. That's what we are calling the law of attraction, is just us recognizing many of the properties of this giant holographic mirror. So it's like you split into a million pieces, and now you experience those million pieces as the outside world. And so to say I can just disconnect from it and I can just make it about me is to not own other as part of the self. And that does have, you know, especially for people in certain narcissistic consciousnesses, it's very, very dangerous for them to start playing that game of I can just disconnect and it can be me and my reality. You live in a consensus reality. You chose into a consensus reality for a very specific reason. So you know, there's a lot of teachers who try to teach the law of attraction as if to say that you can have your own reality. No, you can go into denial is what you can do. You can go into a denial within a consensus reality, which is what Earth is, which is what you chose into. And you chose into it specifically because you wanted to not only gain self-awareness, but also to create integration. You were done with separation. So what inside work, it should be a both type of a thing. I do inside work so that I can be in alignment, so that my actions and my expression in the physical can be in alignment, so that I can actually, you know, actualize the world that we're wanting to see here. So I don't want people to play this like, well, this game is just to show me how to disconnect so that I can transcend from the physical. It's ironic because I'm smiling because it seems like so much of spirituality is a coping mechanism.
Yeah, there are those type of tactics. Yeah, absolutely, I agree, and you always pull them up. That's the great thing about you. You call them out, you know. You don't let us away with them. So I want to move on now a little bit to the divine and the human.
Okay.
Okay. So you talk about that a bit, and it came up for me as well recently, and I thought about, so as you're saying, it kind of goes on from what we just said, there is a feeling that people, particularly in New Age circles, early on, less so now, were trying to transcend the human and move into the divine.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm really seeing that, no, you're not going to get away with that anymore. You've got to integrate the human and the divine is what I feel now. Is that what you're saying too? That's your current... Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so tell me a bit about that.
I don't even know where to jump in. So the universe itself is focused on Earth. I feel like it's sort of backwards for humans as it is for non-physical beings. Humans are sort of focused out of this dimension where everyone else is focused into this dimension, because this is where the juicy stuff is happening. In this physical time-space reality is where non-physical energy is allowed to actualize, is allowed to become physically manifested. And there's a lot of interest in how free will, or the owning of free will, can lead to different creations within the physical. So I don't think that people are looking at this in an artistic enough way. You are an art form that was created by non-physical consciousness, created for a very specific reason. And if you don't carry out that purpose and that reason, it's a bit of a tragedy. But obviously there's so much of our unconsciousness, not just consciousness, that is manifested in the physical, that it is not a purely enjoyable experience, it's a contrasting experience. Because of this, many people, when they get deep into the contrast, when they're experiencing negative things, they tell themselves stories to comfort themselves about escapism, which is things like, well, this is samsara, and what we're meant to do here is we're meant to just like experience the ups and downs until we choose that we're done with it, and we transcend all of it, and then we don't have to incarnate anymore. That is to look at this like some sort of weird cosmic punishment we put ourselves through so that we could finally wake up, so that we could finally not have to be physical. It's just, it's not the way that the non-physical sees our physical dimension. The way that non-physical sees our dimension is, like I said, it's an art piece. No different than you painting on a canvas, but with every single brushstroke you see and know more about yourself. And it's a very exciting thing to participate in, especially when you are choosing to do so. Meaning I'm 100% committing to being physical. So if I have non-physical awareness, that just enhances my ability to be more actualized here in the physical. If I'm doing shadow work, it's so that I can live more in alignment here, you know? I would do work on what patterns I have in the way of relationships, not so that I don't need relationships in the human dimension, but so that I can have higher quality relationships in the human dimension. And when that happens, you watch the structure of human society change. You watch the species evolve. All kinds of wonderful things.
Okay, you're talking about wonderful things. I like it. I like it. So, the completion process, which is a big part of your work, and I think you did an event recently, is that right? Did you actually did a live event?
I actually did.
Event?
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh my god, yeah, it was the first one in 6 months and it was awesome.
Okay. How many people?
35? Yeah.
Just great to have people back in a room, yeah?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was acting like a little puppy, you know? You let them in the room and their tails like wagging at 500 miles an hour, that's what I felt like.
And people were loving it.
They were loving it. It was actually my favorite workshop I've done, and the reason is that everyone was so excited finally to be connected with each other that there was not a single person in resistance to anything. I mean, it was like everybody was just so amazed to be near each other and excited to be doing this kind of stuff again that it wasn't like what we usually get when you hold an event where one person's like, I don't know whether I should have left so-and-so. I don't know like whether this fits in with the rest of my life. It was just 100% in. So it was exciting.
Was it on the completion process? Was that the main part? So talk a little bit about that. I mean, most people are very familiar with that, but talk a little bit about that. Has it evolved since I saw you last, completion process?
No.
Okay.
No, it hasn't really evolved. I'm like so jazzed about teaching this stuff. So do you want me to explain what it's about, or?
Yeah, it's. I suppose the one thing I want to ask is, how do you bring a person into a trauma without reactivating the trauma?
You are reactivating it.
Okay.
But what most people don't realize is that a lot of these traumas are like mildly active. To some degree, right? What I mean by this is like, your subconscious mind is doing things all day long you're not aware of. That's the first thing to understand. So most of us who are in the spiritual field, we're aware of conscious creation and things like this. We're only concerned with what we're consciously thinking about. Which is adorable, because it's to think that your conscious mind has much control over your totality of consciousness. You are much more unconscious than conscious, right? That's how people are until they do enough of this awareness work to make what is unconscious conscious. So this should scare the hell out of every person, because let's take an Olympic swimmer, for example, right? An Olympic swimmer can be doing the backstroke at an incredibly high level at the same time as planning dinner. It's not an issue for them. Why? Because everything's been converted to the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind is capable of that level of execution underneath your awareness. It's not like when the swimmer is thinking about what they're doing for dinner, they're really focusing on swimming. Now I know you know a similar example of this would be when you're driving your car and all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I don't even know where I am right now. Like, I haven't been paying attention to the road for the last 15 minutes, and yet I'm here. Scary. Okay, so that's what your subconscious mind is capable of doing, and that's what I'm talking about right now is just action. Think about what it can do in terms of thought, in terms of memory, in terms of association. So your subconscious mind is keeping these traumas because they are unresolved. It's keeping them active, kind of like a skipping CD. And they're active like on this sliding scale. So usually they're sort of buzzing in the background, but then you encounter a smell or some person who says something, and all of a sudden that minor activation turns into a major activation, right? And that's happening. That's already happening. So if you're not consciously aware of it happening, doesn't mean that it's not happening. And that's a very important thing to understand, because a lot of people who are worried about reactivation of traumas don't realize that they're already open, unresolved, buzzing like a skipping CD in your subconscious mind, causing all kinds of havoc in your time-space reality, because if something is not resolved, it's an active vibration within you. When something becomes resolved, meaning it weaves itself into the fabric of who you are, you've already changed the frequency. It's not a stuck frequency. With a stuck frequency in a time-space that is managed by law of attraction, or law of mirroring, you're going to get more and more and more and more like it. So you shouldn't be afraid of focusing on any of these traumas consciously, especially because by doing so you introduce free will to the frequency, and that changes the tonality of that frequency itself. But you shouldn't be afraid of it because it's already manifesting. That's why you keep getting in the same relationship issue over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's what you're saying there, it's at a low level kind of home.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're gonna, in the process that you do, you're bringing it, I presume, right center stage, but in a very safe space,
yep,
and a new way of looking at it, yeah?
And with an intention. With the intention is to resolve it. The intention is, let's figure out what is making this stuck. What is not resolved? What's making it so I can't get through this? What is the missing need? And when you figure that out, you can introduce that missing need. You can resolve. You can change perspective. You can do all kinds of things that enables a person to take that trauma or that experience and to weave it in to make themselves more. So that the trauma you experience actually becomes something that enhances you instead of diminishes you. But like I said, it's very important to understand that when you actually choose to do this, not only with the intention to create resolve, but also with free will, meaning I'm choosing to do this right now, that's by definition got you out of the victim role. Because that is to introduce the frequency of free will to the frequency of trauma. So I feel like a lot of people don't really understand that there's a lot of shades within focus, you know? And so I want you to think about if I had a cup here and that cup had like yellow water in it. Let's say that represents the trauma. There's a color to free will, like blue. So if I had blue water over here and yellow water over here and I was to pour it in, I'm by definition changing the frequency here. That changes your point of attraction. So it's not just that I'm going in here and making the yellow so yellow that I now can't handle how yellow it is, you know?
So I want to talk to you now about a little bit of a curveball, I suppose. You have kind of supernatural experiences, okay?
Yeah.
You can go out of body or...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in some of that, and I'm just wondering about the whole... Have you got a big interest in kind of extraterrestrials and that kind of topic? Do you explore that much? Do you look at that?
Not really, because it serves as a distraction from where most people need to be focusing.
Okay.
I mean, it's a lot easier to think about what Arcturian beings or Pleiadian beings might be thinking at this time, or to, you know, want to go explore things out of body than it is to fix your human relationships. And when
last few days, and the one about agree to disagree was really good. I really like that one.
Okay.
That's such a commonality in our society,
Yeah.
that we say that, and we say that a lot actually in Ireland.
Really?
We don't like conflict in Ireland,
Okay.
so we would say that a lot. And what you said about it will orchestrate to have a big blow up then between you and the person in some way. Talk about that topic and why that really resonated with you. That's a very recent video of yours, I think.
Well, it's a recent video because of what I was describing when I first sat down here, which is that we're becoming so biased and polarized. And agree to disagree is something that fuels that bias and fuels that hyperpolarization where there's no opportunity to find a meeting of minds at all. Because it is, you know, most people think agree to disagree is this like enlightened way of being. It means that I'm mature and super woke. But it actually does the opposite, because the underlying message when we're saying agree to disagree is I've decided that resolving this conflict with you is actually impossible. I'm never going to get you to change your mind. You're never going to get me to change my mind. And so I'm just going to sit here and wait for you to wake up. So it's got this real condescension to the frequency when people say that we're in avoidance. And agree to disagree, it sort of makes me confused that people think it's even an option. Because there are obvious situations where it is not an option. Like I think the example that I gave in that video is that, let's say that I think it's not a good idea to plow a road through my property, and you think it's a good idea to plow a road through my property. We can't just say agree to disagree. Because if we do that, you're going to go along business as usual according to your desires, and so am I, and I'm going to wake up one day and there's going to be a road through my property. So conflict inevitable, right? But this takes on a more universal flavor when we realize that any point of discord in a universe that is interested in creating oneness, or actualizing oneness, again, it's going to come to head. So that it's going to be a situation where we say agree to disagree until the day we can't. So in that video I gave the example of, I think, having a religious family. So somebody in the family that you really love dies, and now who gets to decide upon the funeral arrangements? What happens if, you know, these members of the family are like super religious and so they want a burial, and these people are like, but you don't get it, we should definitely do cremation. There's gonna be a moment where that agree to disagree comes to a head. We're about to actually meet with that in the United States right now, if not the world, around vaccines. Because it's been sort of like, until this point, it's been agree to disagree about vaccines. Alright, so we don't do vaccines, and we do, you know, exemptions and things like this, and we believe in vaccines, and everyone who's not getting vaccines is killing children, so, but we're gonna get them. It's not gonna be that way anymore. Like, we're gonna be needled in the world into a position, which is what I'm saying, everything comes to a head. This position where agree to disagree on that subject isn't gonna work anymore, if it's now mandated worldwide, for example.
Yeah, that's a really clever setup, the way that's rolling out. You know, it's like they're almost holding it to a point where it's just going to walk in. It's just going to be so easy to implement that. You know, the more the fear is stoked, the more easy that will be. Yeah. Just in terms of when you view timelines that you mentioned there, when you view the Earth's timeline and stuff like that, can you have an out of body experience at will? I remember years ago being fascinated by the Monroe Institute and the work that they do with astral traveling. Bob Monroe I read all of his books, so I loved his work. Is that a thing that you can actually do at will?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't used to be able to do it at will. It used to be spontaneous. Woohoo, that was not good. But yeah, I've gotten a lot more control over it, and so yeah, I could do them at will, and that's what I spend most of my time at night doing.
Wow. And what have you been seeing lately? Anything exciting?
I could write like 15 books on everything I'm saying. This is just insane. I feel like we've taken crazy pills. Being out of body right now with what's going on Earth is a little bit like being trapped in, you know, Alice in Wonderland or something like that. It is unreal. Like the changes that can happen from 1 minute to the next, from one night to the next, it is blowing my mind.
Wow.
Yeah. And you'll see these peaks like show up over certain areas, you know. Australia actually is peaking as of last night.
There's been a lot going on over there, hasn't there? Like it's crazy vibes in Australia. Serious lockdown.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the masculine and feminine.
Okay. Is there any way we could take a 4-minute break?
Absolutely. Do you need to need to get a little drink or something?
I'm doing a liver flush.
Okay, really right now, okay.
It was really great timing. I'll just take 4 minutes, okay?
Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, so while we're on a little break, folks, I was going to ask you all to type in some questions, because actually that's the second half of the event. We're going to get you guys to type in your questions. So I've left you all on mute, kind of just because it's an easier way of doing things. But feel free to type in questions and I'll read them out to Teal, okay? So I'm going to just click on the chat here. And she'll be back with us in a couple of minutes. Okay, so nice, you're rolling in the questions there nicely. Anybody else doing a liver flush out there? This is brilliant, having an event while someone's doing a liver flush. I love it. It's so new age. Yeah, you're back.
I'm back.
How's your liver looking?
Better.
Oh, hang on, I probably muted you, have I? There you go. Oh, wow. There you go. Okay. I muted you.
Oh. Yeah, I don't think most people realize how much their liver has to do with their physical health.
Do you do a lot of flushes?
I did a series, probably about 5 years ago, did a series of them, took about 12 or so to completely clean my liver out. Now I do one every 6 months.
Brilliant. They're so good for you, right?
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Before we go, we're going to go to the audience now and get them to type in some questions. And they're flying off there. They're sending them in like crazy. Just before we go on the whole food thing, I remember talking to you about food. You love food. You love spuds. We call them spuds here in Ireland, potatoes. And I saw you recently cooking up some peppers. You were stuffing the peppers. Are you still vegan?
Yeah.
100% vegan? Yeah. So any little gems that you've come across lately? Any recipes that you just want to share in a kind of fun way? Anything cool?
All the time.
I love substitutes, like, that stuff like blossom that's a bit like fish. I went to this restaurant once and the guy roasted celeriac and he made it like it was like cod. It was incredible. He'd actually marinated it in kind of soya milk and it made it go kind of like actual vein. It was incredible. Exactly like fish. But tell me, what dishes have you been blown away by lately?
I've got a recipe for like a cashew cheese that's sort of like a smoked Gruyere when you do it. Like you make this paste out of it and then heat it in the oven so it's like bubbling, then you take it out and use it as a dip. That has been one of my favorites for the fall time. I've been making tons of pumpkin seeds, as per usual. I love toasting pumpkin seeds in the fall time.
Okay.
What else?
The stuffed peppers, that looks good.
Yes. I like doing chili a lot. I've been doing tamales too because my my right hand, Graciela, many of you will know her already. She comes from Mexico. She's actually born here, but she's Mexican heritage, and so we love to do tamales together. We've been doing a lot of that. Yep.
Mexican food is good. And the spuds, you're still getting the spuds?
Of
potatoes?
course, yes. I'm so Irish that way. I just like love potatoes. I can't even. I've never met a potato I didn't like. Yeah.
We love them here. We're just such, yeah, okay. So now I'll go to questions from some of the audience here. Let's see what we have. Okay. Carlos is saying a similar book to the completion process he read was The Four Agreements. You know that book? He thought that was similar to the completion process. And he says he loved your recent video about cancel culture. Talk about that video a little bit.
Cancel culture. Oh, I think that video was about the fact that people are deplatforming people or wanting to cancel them entirely. It's like when this thing disagrees with me, back to the same thing I've been talking about, you know, the bias and the getting so fixed in our own perspectives that when anybody does something or says something that disagrees with our own perspective, we want to get rid of them entirely. So it's a can we take that thing off of the buffet type of an experience. And yeah, it's doing a lot of damage. Like a lot of damage right now to a lot of people who need to be expressing their opinion. We're tiptoeing, or running, depending on how you look at it, into a world of censorship.
It's very apt. There's a good documentary on that people are talking about now, Social Dilemma, where it's showing us that they're, as you just said earlier, they're feeding us exactly what it is we want, and everything agrees with us. And it's so, yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why we argue so much, because we're so used to being agreed with by AI. AI just backs us up all the time.
Yeah.
So when we go out into the world, we're like, what are you doing? Not agreeing with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have a sense that we don't have to. This is also something that's changed. Is that in history, it's a necessary skill to be able to settle conflict with each other. Like, I need to be on good terms with you, you know. But in the era of modern technology, it's not really a necessity to agree with each other anymore. I mean, it really is. We're going to get into a serious issue if we don't realize that. But we don't have the sensation that it's a necessity anymore. It's sort of affecting us in the same way that modern technologies affected dating, you know. We don't really have to try to make it work with somebody when we've got 4,000 other people who would sleep with us tonight. So,
yeah. 4,000? That's good going. So, Carlos is saying when he was younger, he used to have lots of dreams of flying. He'd fly around the whole city and he'd go to areas and see things from up high. It was amazing. Not happening for him now, and he's wondering, how does he get to fly again?
Oh. Okay, so for a lot of people who are experiencing these things in childhood, there came a point in your life where you were convinced that there was a difference between reality and fantasy. So a lot of what is in between people being able to reactivate the ability to go out of body like that is to get out of those thought patterns that are keeping you stuck in this is real, this is not real. So if I was in your position, what I would do is I'd start examining the parts of myself that still think or are maintaining this idea about what is real or not real, and try to figure out for them why they're doing this, because it's protector personalities that will inhibit that behavior if it's getting in the way of something. Right? A protector personality is always a part of self that is doing something or preventing something because it thinks that doing so is going to benefit you in some way. So it's these protector parts that align with the parents usually, or with a teacher, or with, you know, sometimes peers even, by being like, okay, we're not going to do that thing because it meets with this consequence. So you've got to get into the perspective of that aspect of self, that protector part, to figure out why it's doing that, why it's doing that prevention process, and try to change its perspective so that it can let go of what it's doing. It's not like what needs to be done is some sort of spiritual practice so you can get back to that state. It's about taking care of what's in the way of it, especially if your natural talent is to be able to do that, which if you were as a child, it is.
I remember having dreams like that too, where you kind of wake up in the bed and you don't get them when you get old for some reason. It's kind of weird. Peter is asking, why is Australia peaking?
Australia is peaking right now because it's slipping into authoritarianism. And a lot of the people who are there are feeling it. So there's starting to be a panic about, wait, we can't trust our government anymore. Wait, we don't even know what our government is anymore. Wait, is our government the one that's controlling our country, or is it another country controlling our government? So there's a lot of fear in that country from people that are starting to feel like they're caught in a rat cage. It's like the frequency, the most dominant frequency in the energy there is trapped. But like trapped in a very scary way. Like right now we may be just being held in this position. But that could very soon turn to, and that means you're doing this with your body and this with your life, and this is a yes and this is a no, and we're lacking freedom. So.
Thanks for that question, Peter. So IG is saying, what would you say the collective of humanity needs to accept as futile at this time?
I love that question. God.
Futile.
I love this. Just give me a second. I love that question. I haven't never been asked that question before, so. The old system. I think what humanity needs to accept is futile, is the old system. The old way of doing things, the old structure, the old economy, literally everything that we have built our life around for so many generations isn't working for anyone. If you want to talk the more positive reason why this is all happening, because it's not a short-term game, it's a long-term game. Every person, and I'm saying without exception, every single person has been vibrationally broadcasting forth the asking for a change in system. Everyone. There's not a single person who's been benefited by this. Everybody feels trapped. Everyone feels like they can't get out of the race. Everybody feels, I could go on forever with the way that people are feeling. And when you've got that strong of a collective asking to get out of something that everybody feels like they're imprisoned by, then the universe will grant that wish. But what's ironic is when it begins to grant that wish and come in and be like, all right, it's gone. Everybody holds on to the beams and brick that makes up that reality that they were wishing would be gone.
And just as an aside, are protests, do you think they achieve anything?
Oh God, that is a loaded question. I want to say yes and no. Protests in the past have served as a way of putting enough pressure on the people in power that they have to make a change or else people fall out of favor. Do you want an example? Because Jesus is an example.
Okay, that's a good example.
Well, it's good, but all right, I'll just explain what I mean by this. At the time that Jesus was crucified, Rome was in charge of the Middle East. They owned that place. So what most people don't know is that the Jewish authorities couldn't actually carry out things like capital punishment. They weren't allowed to strap somebody to a cross and hang them. They legally could not do it. Only the Roman Church could. The Roman Church didn't care about Jesus. It wasn't a thing. But there was this, the person who had been appointed by the Romans to be in charge of that whole area of the globe was put under immense pressure by the Jewish authorities. So enough of them gathered together and got frustrated about Jesus that the Roman leader at the time found himself in a position where he either lost the favor of all the Jewish people, or he would get rid of Jesus. So that crucifixion was done by Romans, but not because they cared, because there was enough pressure put on them. So I feel like protests have the capacity to send a very powerful message, which is we're not going to put up with it. There's not going to be an immediate compliance. And so if your plan is to govern me, it's not going to go well if you do that thing. So that would be the yes. The no is we're living in a time space where, quite frankly, our governments around the world are so corrupt at this point. Anybody, the founding fathers, would roll over in their graves. Let's just talk America. The entire American political game is, in and of itself, controlled opposition. The companies who own this world right now are the ones who control both parties. You don't even end up in a position where you can get elected or even run enough for people to know who the hell you are unless you have the backing of these powerful companies. And then when you get in office, of course you're going to do exactly what they want. So I think we're in a little bit of an illusion when we think that that's going to be what actually creates the change. So the answer would be yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay. There's we'll move on from there, but that was good. That was good. Has Teal watched the documentary Plandemic?
No, actually.
You haven't watched it?
No.
Okay, you heard about it?
I've heard this word, but I haven't heard that this is a documentary.
Yeah, Judy Mikovits is the lady who was interviewed. It's well worth watching. Yeah, but anyway, she was looking for your view on it, so that's not going to work. Okay, well, you go watch it soon after the liver flush, and we'll get back to you. So, what are viruses here to teach humans? What frequency is a match to catching a virus, such as COVID-19?
Oh god, that is so... Actually, do you know that I'm going to do an entire Ask Teal episode on this? I've decided I could never do it justice just on this interview. I want to do like a real in-depth dive into viruses and what they mean within the greater web of life, because there's a big lack of understanding around the fact that a lot of your life actually is dependent upon certain viruses. So a lot of what's happening with viruses, specifically when they're out of alignment, is that there's already been this imbalance in the web of life itself, or a lot of this starts with even the way that humans are maintaining their agriculture. So it depends, like part of it depends on like how in alignment or out of alignment you are with the whole web of existence, and part of it has to do with the specific thing in and of itself, because each virus has a different consciousness, otherwise it would be the same virus, right? I wish that I could sit here today telling you that this is an organic virus. I can't.
Okay.
So what we're dealing with is slightly different than, what I might teach somebody about an organic virus.
Okay. How do we prepare, Susan wants to know, for what's to come? How do we get past the self-help culture and really speak to people? And how can she develop her psychic abilities? So how does she prepare for what's to come?
The person who's going to fare the most, or the best in this situation, is the person who has the most adaptability. Right now is not the time to root yourself in security. Right now is the time to be super, super adaptable. That means that you got to diversify everything. Diversify finances. Make yourself as liquid as possible. You want to make it, the chess game we're playing right now is that when they make a move, you got to be able to make a counter move. If you're really, really stuck or really trying to make yourself stable right now, that's going to be really, really hard for you. It depends a lot on like where you are in the world as well. I haven't actually looked at Ireland in terms of, how much of a role they're going to be playing in this greater conflict. But if you live in certain countries, it's a really good idea to start prepping.
Yeah, okay. Haley is actually in Australia right now, and she's saying that if you could say a bit more, she's in Victoria. She's in a very strict lockdown. She'd love your perspective and any advice for dealing with this. Please. Thank you. Looks like she's in a hairy situation there right now. Wants some advice.
The advice that I would give you is to figure out in what ways you feel powerless. I want you to imagine that the world is pigeonholing you into a position where you're meant to face your powerlessness. Not just run away from your powerlessness. I mean really face it. So going into it, figuring out exactly what it is that is making you feel so powerless. And once you have those elements, start to directly and deliberately plan how you could find empowerment in that sector of your life instead. So, let's see if I can come up with an example. Let's say that what I find out is that it's making me feel powerless in terms of finances. Okay, so if I know that's where my powerlessness is, and I accept that that's the reality, I can't push against the fact that there's this problem happening where I'm feeling powerless about finances. What things could I do in order to create a sensation of empowerment around finance? And then start doing those things. That could be putting my money in different places than where it is currently. That could be changing beliefs I have. For example, abundance is always going to flow to somebody who has skill. So the most important thing I can do right now is to develop skills, because nobody can take that away or give them, for example. Does that make kind of sense?
Yeah.
One thing I do want to mention to everybody, you are on a programming schedule. The human race is on a programming schedule right now by the people who are in charge. And I mean really in charge, and you've never seen them. So, the people who are really in charge right now have put the human race on a programming schedule, and this is deliberately planned to create an uncle scenario. You have the game Uncle in Ireland or no?
No, that sounds like
Okay. So the game Uncle is like somebody puts you in a chokehold or whatever, and then if you're done and you've lost, you have to cry Uncle, right? So like they'll twist your arm behind your back as hard as they can, and then at a certain point you're like, I give, Uncle, right? So what's being played with the human race right now is this big game of Uncle, but it's in alignment with, vaccine rollout, and it's in alignment with mass surveillance and things like this. The game of Uncle puts you under just enough pressure that you're ready to crack under the holding of that pressure. So what happens when the human race can't handle it anymore is they turn it down just a little bit, and then the second that the human race has got a little bit of relief, they turn it up again. And what is being planned right now is that a lot of these changes within society that would ensure them 100% control, more of an authoritarian type of regime, is something that we're supposed to say yes to. They can't have a mass revolt. So what do? You hold the pressure just long enough that you promise people that by compliance they get everything that they want, all their civil liberties, all the experiences that they've been missing, everything. And then people give into it, right? So right now it's like the more that you can create a sensation of freedom within this Uncle game, or a sensation of relief within the Uncle game, the more likely it is that when they actually, do this rollout of everything that they're planning, you're going to be able to say no instead of say Uncle. One of the reasons why it's hard for anybody, including myself, to give a straightforward answer as to what people should or shouldn't be doing at this particular moment in time is because of the fact that we're in that suspended animation. We're in that Uncle mode, right? Where we have to make a personal decision whether I want to not shop at that store if they require masks or put a mask on, And a lot of what is going to be done hasn't been done yet. So the way that it sort of feels is like we're in a high-speed car wreck as a country, but we're like in suspended animation. I mean, most people are like, how is it possible that the economy hasn't fallen through the floor right now? There's no explanation for this. What is happening right now? It just sort of feels like everybody's isolated in their house, not really knowing what the hell is happening, and everybody's put on pause. And what I'm wanting people to understand is that they can think about what's happening right now like in a rollover car wreck. Imagine somebody just pushed slow motion. So back in March, somebody pushes slow motion, and we're still like in this car wreck. So we haven't actually hit the ground on the other side. So the reason that a lot of experts can't tell you what to be doing at this particular time is because you don't really know what counteraction to create unless you hit the ground. All you can do in the air is think about potentials. Okay, so if this is the potential for when we hit the ground in this car, maybe I should become more loose at this moment. Maybe I should be doing inside work at this moment about what would make me a match to a car wreck, Does that sort of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You said but you were sort of like, I don't know.
Well, you caught me there doing a little technical thing as well while I was listening to you.
Okay.